Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be right back with today's guest, but as always, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, you've heard me say before, these are all companies that I used as an athletic director. They're all great companies. You should be using them too. So take the next 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs, then listen to our interview, and then go and visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to Snap Raise for their support. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and been disappointed in the results? Well, those days are gone. Go to snapraise.com. It's hands down the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with great success. I'm telling you, it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it. It's snapraise.com. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com. Check out the website. Their team is going to have you creating world-class social media content in seconds, and it's so easy, even I can do it. Your kids are on social media, and whether it's a simple post to celebrate their accomplishments or an entire newsletter sharing everything that your athletic department does with your stakeholders, the Gipper team will have you up and running in no time. Gipper's used and trusted by over 20,000 high school and college programs. It's professional graphic design made simple. Go to Gipper.com for more information. We also want to thank our friends at Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day, whether it's scheduling, rosters, results. For me, the eligibility and clearance platform alone is worth the price. Go to homecampus.com. That's it. Don't forget to mention the podcast. Homecampus.com. We also want to say thank you to Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables, and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo and see their products in action. I'm telling you, probably the best purchase I ever made as an AD was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Check out the score tables and the video boards, but go to sidelineinteractive.com. We'd like to thank Huddle for their support. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches, all of our coaches, just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our student athletes loved the videos. Our parents loved the streaming, but there's so much more. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We want to say thanks to our friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. I'm telling you, you put one of these in your gym lobby or your auditorium, it's going to be a magnet for kids, for alums, for everybody that walks in that door. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out all their great products today. We also want to say thanks to Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, I didn't get my master's from Ohio, but my assistant AD did, and it was a great experience. It's very affordable, just 20 months, totally online. And while he was earning his master's degree, he also completed 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio Online Masters in Athletic Administration. We also want to say thanks to Hometown. Hometown's changing the game for schools and organizations with their suite of solutions for things like digital ticketing, fee-free fundraising, and athletic websites. Whether you're an AD, a coach, or a school administrator, Hometown makes it easy for you to save time, raise more money, and bring your community together. You can learn more at hometownticketing.com. And we want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Athletic directors already get feedback, but a lot of times it's from a very small group that just wants to complain. Athletic Surveys is going to connect you to that group, but they're also going to connect you to the 98% that supports your program. And having that type of data is incredibly valuable, especially when you're visiting with that frustrated parent, maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast. Check them out today. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. It's one of our back to college episodes, and we're going to Arkansas to visit with Brooke Brewer. Brooke is the athletic director at Northwest Arkansas Community College. Also has extensive background in the high school level, and we're going to hear all about that. But Brooke Brewer, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Hi, Jake. Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here today and share a little bit of knowledge, hopefully.
Oh no, absolutely. We're excited to hear. Um, for our Brooke, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, as I like to say. Tell us your life story in 2 minutes. Um, Maybe just take us up in this segment through your own high school and maybe even your college days, and then we'll hear about your career later. But what's the Brooke Brewer origin story?
Sure. So I'm originally from Louisiana, born and raised there, still love the culture of Louisiana and grew up, went to a large high school. I actually grew up dancing, and you can imagine I lived in SEC country, so sports were huge. It's the weekends revolve around sports. And so that was just always a part of culture growing up. And then I went to Centenary College of Louisiana, which at the time, their claim to fame was actually being the smallest D1 school in the country. They've since moved down and they're a D3 school now, but it was really kind of a fun claim to fame that they had when I was there. And so growing up, I always enjoyed being around athletics. I was a competitive dancer. And so that's kind of how I ended up in the role I'm in today. And I tell people all the time, I'm probably the most non-traditional AD you'll ever meet, because I grew up in a sport that a lot would probably argue is not even a sport, and then kind of spearheaded that into a career in athletics. So it's been great.
Well, again, I appreciate you sharing that. I want to go back to, those, let's say, junior high, high school days. And full disclosure, I was always very fortunate as an athletic director. We had great coaches and programs and student athletes in cheer and competition cheer. And one of our schools, we did have a dance program. But again, there's no debate at all. It's definitely a sport. They definitely are athletes. But for you, you mentioned it, growing up in SEC country. How was that for you in junior high? Were you a dance kid? And I know the training can be rigorous. Were you a dance kid all the way through? Did you do other sports? Was there backyard football or driveway basketball in your neighborhood?
So yes, I mean, I definitely dabbled across the board, and I think that's what's really important. And now I have kids, and so I try to help them be exposed to as many sports as they can, and then you find out the one that sticks. Right? Mine are 5 and 3. We haven't figured out what sticks yet. We'll get there. But I grew up doing all the things, and maybe it was actually playing in little league, but maybe it was just playing outside with the neighbors and having a good time. And so. Um, from there, dance is what stuck. And so that's where all the time and the energy and the training went into at that point. But of course, always being a fan of sports and always being a part of games and making sure that, you know, as not only as a team, but just as a person, I'm a very competitive person. And so I enjoy competition and I enjoy being around that type of life. And so that's where you could find me in junior high and high school was always going to be at a game, at a sporting event, or at a practice. It was one of those things. I was never at home. I'm still like that today. My husband makes fun of me. He's like, you can't be home. You can't sit still. And I really can't. I like to go and I like to do. And again, I think some of that goes back to that Louisiana culture of it's always about going and hanging out and being together and, let's just spend time together as a family, as a community. So that's something that's carried into my life today.
And I think that is a fairly common trait. A colleague that does podcasts and things like that, longtime AD, he wrote a book about the DNA of an athletic director. I think that's part of our DNA. We're just kind of wired for competition and doing those types of things. Very cool. For you, from a competitive athlete standpoint, dance many times is not a school sponsored activity, or if it is, it's just not. to the degree that dance athletes can find it, out in the community and in a studio, what was your experience like in high school with that? Did your high school have a strong dance program, or were you working through a club?
To both. And I think, it's interesting to remember this was a long time ago for me. And so to see the way the sport has evolved and changed over time has been really cool. My most recent role before here, I was actually coaching high school dance. And so just to see the change of just what those student athletes had access to versus what I did when I was an athlete growing up. Most of our training had to come from studios to be competitive. And there was a lot of like what I lovingly refer to as like look cute on the sideline and shake your palms, which is not it. So I think in many places that we're turning the corner on that culture, which is really great. But I would say definitely there was a great blend of studio training along with that school training because I do think it's so important for students to be involved in a school sponsored activity and just to have that community within their school, within their classmates, as much as, I'm a huge advocate for private training and camps and all of those things, but there's something really special and unique about being involved at your school and being able to have those opportunities there. And that was something my parents always pushed as well. You can choose to do whatever you want to do, but you need to be involved in something at school and it's going to keep you grounded and hold you accountable.
Oh, absolutely. And all the high school athletic directors that are listening right now, they're just going, yes, high school sports. Let's fast forward to your college days, both from competition dance for Centenary, as well as your undergrad experience training for your life job, teacher, coach, and now AD. How did that all work together?
Yeah, so I went to college and now I look back and it's really funny and I think like I can't believe my parents let me do this, right? But I went to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Um, I knew I loved to dance. I knew I loved to be in that world. And so I was a dance major, which is tends to err more on the artistic side of things, performing arts side of things, which was a really great way for me to challenge myself because it's not about, what are the skills you can do in the tricks. It's all about the artistic story. But I think that training made me a better coach, just being able to understand both sides of the coin there. Um, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I was a dance major and I was really just kind of figuring it out. And then I started teaching dance at studios. And so I knew that I loved that. I'd always been in that world. And so from there, it became what can I do with my job that allows me to continue to teach studio? Which studio classes are typically at night when kids are out of school. And so I thought, okay, well, I can be a teacher and I like to teach dance. So clearly I'm going to like to teach and it'll work out. And where I was living, competitive dance in the schools was not very strong. So that didn't really enter my mind. It was more, I'll teach here and I'll do the studio side of the house. And then things changed. And my then fiance actually got a job offer in Arkansas. And I was sitting at a basketball game with him. He was actually in athletics too. I was sitting at a basketball game with him and I sat by a woman who was the wife of the women's head basketball coach. And so she and I were talking and she asked what I did. And I told her, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, are you going to move up here since your fiance's here?" And I said, "Well, yeah, that's the plan." And she was like, "I have a job for you. You've got to email me your resume. We're going to hire a dance teacher and a dance coach in my school district. And we have a highly competitive program. I'm going to send you information about it." And so she and I got to talking, insanely competitive program. I sent her my resume. They hired me on as the second coach there. The next year, the head coach left. And so the rest was kind of history. And so really I ended up there from a career standpoint because I just was trying to figure out what can I do in my career to be able to do what I love and pursue my passion. And then every step since then has just evolved. And so it's been, I never in a million years as a college student would have thought I'd be an athletic director. And now I can't imagine doing anything else. And so it's just really fun to see how life ebbs and flows.
Well, again, we talk about this all the time, the value, the importance of networking and,
Mhm.
and having those conversations, whether you introduce yourself to someone or someone, comes up to you, you just don't know where that connection is going to lead. Very cool stuff. Let's go and take our first break. For our listeners, we're visiting today with Brooke Brewer. She's a longtime coach and educator. Now she's the director of athletics at Northwest Arkansas Community College. We're going to hear all about that and more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Snap Raise for their support. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and then been disappointed in the results? Well, those days are gone. Go to snapraise.com. It's hands down the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with great success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out all of their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it. It's snapraise.com. We also want to say thanks to our good friends at Gipper. Your students are on social media, and if they're not seeing content that celebrates their accomplishments and promotes your program, you're missing out on a great opportunity. Go to Gipper.com. It's used and trusted by over 20,000 high school and college programs across the country. And whether it's a social media post celebrating a big win or an entire newsletter that's sharing all the great things you do with your community, the Gipper team will have you creating world-class content in seconds. It's professional graphic design made easy. How easy? Well, it's so easy, even I can do it. Go to Gipper.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast. That's Gipper.com. You're going to be glad you did. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Brooke, you kind of went right out of college into that career path. In your words, a high-powered program. How was that? We talk in coaching and being an AD, the expression, you don't know what you don't know. You've been a very successful athlete, but what did you find out that you didn't really know being a head coach right out of college?
Oh my goodness, so much. I think the biggest thing for me was really learning the balance of, you know, as a head coach, what do my principals and my administrators who lean more academic, what do they need to see out of my program and what do I need to do to deliver for them? Versus what does my athletic director need and want to see out of my program versus what does a district administrator need and want to see out of this program, and how am I going to meet all these needs? And also recognizing that at the time you're still in the sport, that you've got some people who are like, you're just supposed to stand there and look cute and shake your bumps, and so trying to kind of tell that story of like, no, this is what we're doing and this is why it's important. And it's been really cool. I started at that program in 2013. And so now it's been 12 years, and to see the cool things they're doing now, it's really incredible. And their head coach now and I got to work together. Our times crossed a little bit. And so it's just been really inspiring to see the things that she's been able to do to tell those stories because, you know, there was a lot of learning, and especially too dealing with parents as a younger head coach is difficult at times because a lot of times you have parents who you've got to get them to trust you and you've got to get them to buy in. And I don't think any of it's ever purposeful, but when they're looking at somebody who maybe only looks a few years older than their senior in high school, there's a lot of trust you have to gain with that group for them to really understand that you do have their athlete's best interest at heart, and they do need to be looking to you from that coaching leadership perspective, not just as a random person who's here trying to tell them how to do their job. And, another piece of that, the school was in a relatively small town. And so a lot of people who were coaches in that school at the time were born and raised there or in the really nearby area. And so you're dealing with a little bit of like, who is this person who moved here? And like, we don't even know her. Like, her family's not from here. We don't know, do we trust this person? A lot of it's just sharing your story and building trust. And a lot of that comes with time, and just when your athletes go home from practice and they're like, yeah, we had a great practice and we enjoy being there and we enjoy working hard, you slowly build that.
Yeah, you got to love that small town experience. We had several in our 40 plus years as teachers, my wife and I. Who is this person from Louisiana?
Right.
Okay.
What do they know about
Yeah.
us here?
Um, people that like us, we participated in sports, we did it, high school and college, we became coaches. I mean, we already talked about it. It's in our DNA, but there's a difference between the competitive experience as an athlete and the coaching experience. I'm a big moments person. Was there a moment for you in those early years where you said, all right, this is where I'm supposed to be. I know I'm supposed to be a coach and a leader. Uh, Anything like that stick out for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are so many. I think the most rewarding part of coaching, particularly at the high school level, is when you have students that you just see them get it. Like they finally get where they could go with this. And so, there's layers, right? There's the kid I remember who came in and was like, I hate coming to school and I hate everything about school except being here.
Right.
And this is why I wake up and I come to school every day. And that was very real for him. And so you begin to see the bigger picture as the coach that the kids don't even see yet of this student may not have graduated. They may not have a great family life. Like there's a lot going on here, but they're going to wake up and get out of bed and they're going to come to school because we're here and they're going to keep their grades up because they know they have to continue to be here. And so to me, that's what it's all about. And that's when you realize like what I'm doing every single day actually really does matter. And then you have the moments on the flip side of that, the kids who maybe never thought about competing at the collegiate level, right? Or never knew they were good enough. And then you start to see those light bulbs. We had students when I was in Alma, we ended up going to the national championship event multiple years. And one of the biggest was there was a point I looked over and one of our boys, we have boys on the team, which is now more common, but at the time was really not. And one of the top college coaches in the country had pulled our boy over. And he walked back over to me like he had seen a ghost. And I was like, what just happened? He was like, they want me to come try out. And I was like, well, there we go. That's what we've been telling you. Like, you're good enough to do this. And so it's just cool to see those moments and all those little special interactions with students are the reminders you need along the way that all the time is worth it. All the energy you pour in is worth it. All the sleepless nights are worth it. It's exhausting to be a coach. It truly is. Which I think is a lot to do with now as an AD. I think about like, how do I want to support my coaches in the way that I always wanted to be supported when I was coaching too?
And it's a great point. You're absolutely spot on. And I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second, um, because um, I think cheer and dance. It's not right, wrong, good or bad. I think it's just the way it is. Too many times, the program is underfunded,
Mhm.
not supported, not treated as a real sport. You've already heard where I stand on that. Um, how and you mentioned that your program was very competitive prior to you coming on board, so I'm guessing there was some support there. What were some things that you had there that you would encourage our listeners, athletic directors, to try and provide at their school for their dance and cheer performance teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll give all the credit in that scenario to the superintendent of the school district at the time. He is a visionary, and it wasn't even just about dance or cheer. It was about what can we do to provide students the best opportunity possible. And he was a huge believer in extracurricular activities, no matter what it was. He was actually a theater guy, but and a music guy. But it was if it was athletics, if you could convince him that your kids needed that to be successful, you were going to get it, and he was going to figure out how you were going to get it. So I would say, I think a lot of times athletics is it's the shiny, showy thing that we get to do as a school, and that's wonderful. But I think really looking to what are the programs kind of behind the scenes that are making those things happen? A lot of times for us too, maybe it's our media program that's live streaming the games. It's helping athletics be that shiny, beautiful picture we get to produce. But how are you serving those other students as well? And I think that was something that he always instilled in us. And as coaches, he very much always instilled like, you're not going to get everything you want. That's impossible. But if you can convince me that this is best for kids and our kids genuinely need it, I'm going to walk right alongside you and figure out how we're going to make it happen. And maybe it's not going to be tomorrow. Maybe it's going to be in a year or 2 years. but we'll figure out how to get it. And I've tried to carry that with me now into this role I'm in now. And that was when I left and went to the next high school I was at in here in Northwest Arkansas. That was something I really held to. And it was a very different type of leadership there. Our athletic directors there were wonderful, but they were very much more like, you tell us what you need, and like we're going to trust you as the professional and make sure that we do everything in our power to get it for you. And I think a lot of that came with I was older at the time and had seasoned experience. But I think really just continuing to be knowing as the coach, you're the advocate for your program. And nobody's going to know what you need if you're not in there telling it. And I think probably any athletic director I ever worked for will tell you, like, she doesn't stop and she will not leave us alone until she's advocated for her kids and the things they need and the things they want. And there's things that over time you learn, like, okay, I got to let go of that and I got to move on and find a plan B. But there's things that everybody would know, like, okay, she's not going to let that go. She's going to keep going. So,
And again, I love to hear that story. I share a similar story. Years ago, I was the AD, our girls basketball coach, and he's an AD now, years later. But I say, his name is Mark. I said, I've never had a coach before that I told them no more than Mark. No, we're not going to do that. But I also have never had a coach that I've said yes to more than Mark because it was, hey, Jake, let's do this. And
mhm.
sometimes he had some great ideas and we said yes. So, yeah, absolutely. You got to be the advocate for your program and work with your athletic director. So, great stuff. I love it. Let's go and take another quick break. Our guest again is Brooke Brewer. And after the break, she's going to tell us about her current position as the Director of Athletics at Northwest Arkansas Community College. So let's hear from one of our sponsors, actually, a couple of our sponsors. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to thank Home Campus for their support of the podcast. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day, whether it's scheduling, rosters, results. For me, the athletic eligibility and clearance platform alone is worth the price. To find out more or to just get started, go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. We want to thank Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their video boards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an AD was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. It's tremendously versatile. We use it for home games, of course, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies, and the customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast, sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to thank our friends at Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches, all of our coaches, just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our student athletes loved the videos, and our parents loved the streaming, but there is so much more. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and find out how to turn your school into a Huddle school. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Brooke, it sounds like you had a really great thing going there at your school in a dance program. What's the story behind becoming the athletic director at Northwest Arkansas Community College? How'd that all play out?
Yeah, so I left my first coaching job, which was in Alma, Arkansas, to move to Bentonville to coach high school in 2020. And really, COVID had a lot to do with that. We all got sent for COVID, and I got to spend a decent amount of time reflecting. And I had a 1-year-old at the time. And I just felt like for our family, we wanted to live in the Northwest Arkansas area. And I felt like with a different coaching role, I would end up with a little more time with family. And so I was in Bentonville School District, which is a phenomenal school district from 2020 to 2023. And when I was there, really had the opportunity to rebuild their dance program and kind of not start it from the ground up, but restructure what that looked like. And then my last year there, I actually got the cheer program as well. I did, learned about cheer while I was doing it. And that was great. But through that, really got to work with our IDs there a lot about, they knew that athletic leadership was what I wanted to get into. And so got to really work with them and learn from them. And they were amazing, amazing people, and really provided me with opportunity to kind of shadow and learn in that role. And so as high school athletic director jobs would open up, I was applying for them within that last year or so, and wasn't really getting anywhere there because, again, I think in many ways you get a resume and you're like, here's this younger female dance coach. Like, what does she know about being an AD? So there was an awareness there that I had of like, okay, I'm gonna have to really spend some time digging in here and networking and making sure that people understand the layers, and don't just see a piece of paper and go like, okay, now. And then Northwest Arkansas Community College is in Bentonville, and they they decided to start athletics. And so there was not an athletic program. And so the athletic director job posted, and I was like, dude, I don't know. Like I love high school sports. Like I want to get out of high school and go to college, and who knows? I don't know. I probably don't have a shot. I'll throw my name in the hat for it, see what happens. Well, here we are. So it was, the more I learned about the job and the more I was here, the more I loved it. Because one thing I always loved at the high school level was just the opportunities that sports and athletics provided kids that wouldn't have those opportunities otherwise. And the more I was at NWAC and meeting with leadership and learning about the mission of the college and the values of the college, that was all going to remain true. And so it was a way to continue to provide opportunities for our local region and all of our talented athletes here that could come to the next level and play a sport here at NWAC, and to provide those opportunities for the students who are already here on campus. I tell people all the time, Northwest Arkansas is amazing. And we have the most amazing, incredible, talented athletes, and we have incredible K-12 schools here. And so to me, it just seems so logical that these student athletes would begin to have an opportunity here in Arkansas at home to play at the collegiate level, and they wouldn't be having to go off to Kansas or Oklahoma or wherever else they've been going to play. We do have University of Arkansas Fayetteville about 45 minutes south of us. And so that kind of played in as well, because I think a lot of our students at the high school level, if they wanted to play sports, they were like, well, I have to either go JUCO and go off, and maybe I don't want to go off, or I've got to be D1 SEC ready. And that's not always the case. You can be talented enough to play college sports, but maybe not be ready for that step quite yet.
Right.
And so to me, this was just a really logical place. And I'm super blessed that as we went through the multiple rounds of the interview process, I ended up in this role.
Well, you alluded to a point that I want to follow up on. I do this frequently. Yeah, and you said it. Okay, you're young. You're the earlier stages of your career. You're not a rookie, but you're young, and you're a woman, and you've never been an athletic director before. How did you sell yourself to that, whether it was a committee or that college president? Okay. We talk about interviewing skills and things like that a lot on the podcast. Looking at your resume, it was a good resume, but there's nothing there about being an AD. How did you sell yourself on that job? Obviously, they made the right decision, but how did you help them make that decision?
Yeah, so I mean, I've known I wanted to do this for a long time, and I'm very much the type of person, once I have my mindset on something, it's going to happen. And so I studied for this job like it was already my job. I mean, just I knew everything about the college I could possibly learn. I knew everything about NJCAA. I knew everything about NCAA. I made sure, I was like, there's not going to be a question they're going to ask me that I can't answer. Like, I'm going to make sure I know exactly what, that they can feel confident, even though I haven't been an AD. But I think part of it too was they're building a program from the ground up. There hasn't been athletics here. Well, essentially, in my previous two jobs coaching, in many ways, that was a lot of what I did. And so I really tried to sell that side of it of like, you can bring in an AD who's AD'd for years and knows what they're doing and they do a great job, I'm sure. But have they built a program from nothing? Like, have they started with scratch and said, like, let's build this thing out and make it happen? And that was something I felt like I had the opportunity to do. And so I really capitalized on that experience. And I mean, I can confidently say now after doing this, those experiences were so beneficial for me within the first year here. And the great thing about it is because there wasn't athletics, there was no, oh, well, we've always done it this way, or you need to do this. It was, what do you want to do? What do you think? We hired you to figure it out. So now you can make a plan and try to figure it out. And we have amazing college leadership. And it was a multiple round interview through our trustees, with our president, with the committee. There was an open forum that media was at. It was very intense. And I mean, the whole thing was just selling the story. And we have an amazing college president here at NWAC who knows the value of athletics, is a very passionate supporter of providing as many student life opportunities as possible. And so he and I really aligned on that, and I think that was very helpful. And I know for a fact there were probably people who were like, "What? No, you're not. Why are you hiring her? Like, what are we doing? Are we sure?" Um, and honestly, it just fuels me every day. I'm like, okay, we're gonna make sure all those people say, okay, hey, yeah, you like this was a good call, this was right, and some of them have come around already. So hopefully, we'll get them all around eventually.
Well, again, terrific answer, and you hit on I think two very important things. Number one, the research. I remember for my what turned into be my final job, I was the AD at a very successful private school in Tallahassee, and then eventually retired from there. But I wanted that job, and I knew it was perfect for me. And I did my research just like you said. I knew everything. I looked at um, playoff rosters and results. And as this room with board members and parents and athletes, I remember my mom said, "Well, my daughter runs cross country. What do you know about cross country?" And I go, "Well, my wife's a Hall of Fame cross country coach. My daughters ran cross country. I think I know a little, but last year at state, you guys placed fourth, but the three teams in front of you, most of their roster were seniors. So you've got, your entire team coming back, and you just see the expression on their faces, like, how does
Mhm.
he know this stuff?" And there were a couple other examples that they ask questions from areas that I had researched. But absolutely, you got to do your research about the school. You got to show them how bad you want it. And then you talked about those previous experiences. You had not been an AD, but you had built programs. And in that new environment, I've actually been involved in a couple of startups myself. It's such a unique experience, as you alluded to. Great stuff. Okay. We're going to do a deeper dive into Northwest Arkansas Community College in our next segment. But right now, and we'll do this at the end of the podcast too. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain a little bit or just add you to their network, and it sounds like listeners, you got a great resource here. How do our listeners get a hold of Brooke Brewer?
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, Brooke Brewer on LinkedIn. You'll see the NWAC Eagle is my header, so you'll know it's me. And then you can always email me. And honestly, the easiest way to remember it, if you email athletics at nwacc.edu, that comes to me. And so I'll respond to you there, and then you'll have my personal email after that, and we can connect.
All right. And that's Brooke and I connected on LinkedIn too. I saw her
Yeah.
profile, thought she'd be a great guest. We're going to take another break. I know that's shocking to our regular listeners, but we are coming back with more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to take a moment and thank our good friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the different events, or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touch screen video consoles. It's also a great way to share your school's unique history and your proudest moments. If you put a Wall of Fame, either a wall mount or a floor mount console in your gym lobby, in your auditorium, on your school, it's going to be a magnet for your student athletes, for your parents, for your boosters, for alumni. You really got to check them out. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. And as always, make sure you mention the podcast. They'll give you a nice discount. Vital Signs Wall of Fame. We also want to thank our good friends at Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, I didn't get my master's at Ohio, but my assistant athletic director did, and it was a great experience. It's very affordable, just 20 months, totally online. And while you're completing your master's degree, you're also completing 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Go to ohio.edu/info/MAA for more information. And we want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing. Hometown is truly changing the game for schools and organizations with their suite of solutions for things like digital ticketing, fee-free fundraising, and athletic websites. Whether you're an AD, a coach, or a school administrator, Hometown makes it easy for you to save time, raise more money, and bring your community together. You can learn more at hometownticketing.com. That's hometownticketing.com. Check them out today. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Brooke, you shared some really cool aspects of Northwest Arkansas, great administrative support. Seems like there's a lot of community enthusiasm, but let's get down and dirty here. You have no athletic program, no athletic history, and now you're the director of that. How do you go from 0 to 100 miles an hour, and help our listeners understand how they might be able to do the same thing?
Yeah, so I mean, I think my personality is very like go big, that I don't like, let's go, full send, let's do it. Which makes this a good job for me. So really the very beginning, so the college had talked about doing athletics for a long time. And it just never happened, never got off the ground. And so I think initially there was still a lot of skepticism of like, okay, they hired an athletic director. Are they actually going to do it this time? And so most of my days early on were just spent being at events, being out in the community, telling the story. We have a cross country team that was started prior to my arrival that's amazing and has done really, really well and has the most incredible coach, Joe Spatvoigt. And they were started as a like, hey, we'll fund this and we'll see what happens. And they were amazing. And so I was able to kind of share, hey, we've already set a precedent for we're going to be highly successful. And so lots of meeting, lots of mingling, lots of coffee chats, lots of lunches was really the beginning. And then especially on campus with our faculty and staff, getting that buy-in. And really, I shared a lot about being an educator, outside of coaching and athletics, in the sense of the college is not ever going to stop focusing on academics, and academics are never not going to be the most important thing here. This is a layer. And here's some statistics about how student athletes can help the culture of the college. Here's statistics about how being involved helps students graduate at higher rates, and really just kind of starting to tell that story both internally and out in the community. Like I said, we're still very much an SEC country. People love sports here. And so most of the battles were not convincing people that sports are awesome and important. It was convincing people that we're not going to lose sight of who we are as an institution as we add sports, right? Like we're still going to be an academic institution. And this is another way that we reach our mission of serving students. So that was a lot of the first 90 days, but really just trying to get that culture and get that buy-in and set it off from the beginning. And as we were recruiting students, making sure we're recruiting students that are going to buy into that culture as well. So when I arrived, the overall team GPAs were really low. Again, they hadn't had much support in terms of administrative, like a true athletic program. It was kind of flying by the seat of their pants a little bit. But we have raised our student athlete GPA by an entire point. So the average student athlete GPA here right now is a 3.0, which I'm extremely proud of, because I can say all day long that academics are important and it's about educating the whole athlete and it's about holistic wellness. But if we're not actually producing that out of our program, then it's all talk. So being able to show that and really show, we just renovated our fitness center here on campus. It's 100% free for every single student at the college to use. And that was really important was, making sure this is not just an for athletes fitness center, but this is a completely free resource that any student at our college can go use and spend time in that room and make sure that they are getting the training that they want to have. And it's cool and it's branded out. And so just making sure our students have opportunities. We've done fun intramural bowling and cornhole and you name it, we've done it. We have a cycling club now. We just do a lot of really cool stuff to try to get our whole student body involved. And I think that's one of the biggest things I'm proud of. We also went through an intensive 5-year feasibility study. And I'll shout out the Picture Group is who we worked with. They're absolutely phenomenal. And I would recommend them 10 out of 10 times. But when we were starting athletics, it was like, okay, how are we going to decide what sports we're going to have? And how are we going to roll this out in a way that's financially sustainable, in a way that, we know confidently 10 years from now, we're still standing. And not only are we still standing, but we've grown. And so it was actually about a 6-month process with the Picture Group with an insanely deep dive into data. We looked at sport trends. We looked at participation trends at the high school level, at the NCAA level. We looked at cost. We looked at facilities in our area. We looked at cost per student athlete. We looked at enrollment impact. I mean, you name it, we probably looked at it. And we built an incredibly sustainable plan that we were able to go through our board of trustees and secure funding for, that took $0 from the college operating budget. And so it is all completely fee funded. It is sustainable for the long haul. And I feel very confident that that plan is going to set us up for success 10 years from now. I'm looking forward to winning the first national championship with it, because I know it's going to come, because it's such a solid plan and it gives us the ability to recruit the best coaches. Because that's the other side of it. Like, we have an amazing cross country coach. He's actually, I tell students all the time when we're recruiting them, because he's so sweet and humble and he doesn't brag on himself enough. But I'm like, this man could be coaching probably at any school. And he's here with us because he believes in the mission. He started as a junior college athlete, and he knows how imperative this step is for so many of our students. So, we want to recruit the best and have the best. And that's something I'm proud of, everyone buying into that vision, and the fact that we have college leadership who has supported it.
Boy, great description of the program and some really cool details. Share with our listeners. You did obviously you talked about the cross country, but what are your current sport offerings? What are some sports that are on the schedule to maybe add in a year or 3 or 5? And
Mhm.
then from an academic standpoint, what are some programs that might not be offered at other schools, but you have them at NWAC?
Right. So right now we have a cross country program, men's and women's. We have men's and women's track and field that starts this spring is their first season. So we're really excited for them. We have esports, which is competitive video gaming. So you're probably familiar. It's like taking off across the country. So we have an esports team. They're really good. We have cycling, which is really unique. So Bentonville is the self-proclaimed cycling capital of the world. We have more mountain bike trails per capita than nearly anywhere in the world. It's wild. And so to me, that one was a no-brainer, right? Cycling is not an NJCAA sport, but we can, through USA Cycling, have a team. So right now it's recreational, but our hope is for it to become, a competitive program over time. In 2026, we'll start men's and women's soccer. So we're super pumped about that. 2028, baseball will come on, and 2029 we'll start softball. That's phase one. And then phase two, we've identified indoor sports that we feel like we'll have to recheck trends, of course, a little bit closer to those dates, but we feel like they seem very promising. Facilities, basketball, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's wrestling, women's volleyball, and then of course adding in cheer and dance to support those programs too.
Wow. Sounds like a great program already and
Yeah, we
very
got a lot going
ambitious.
on.
Yeah. No, very cool.
Yeah, when we did the feasibility study, I told, as we were working with Picture Group, we were talking about pacing and timing. And I was like, I feel like I want to go as fast as we can, that's financially and institutionally responsible. But a lot of that goes back to, you know, we've talked about doing it as a college for a long time, and now we're actually doing it. And I felt like we needed to put a plan out there that showed like, no, we're fully committed. We dove head first in the water and like we're doing the thing. So
Yeah.
I think
No,
we did.
and it's a good lesson, good reminder that, programs you want to grow, you want to serve your student population and your community, but at the same time, you don't want to roll something out and be unprepared to fund it, to staff
Right.
it, et cetera. So yeah, you want to do it smart. Very cool stuff. Well, Brooke, this has just been so neat, spending some time with you, getting to know you, adding you to our podcast team. But we're not done yet. We always wrap up with the athletic director's toolbox. Now, you certainly established you know your way around the world of athletics, but we're going to take our final break, hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsored this segment. And when we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. Sound familiar? But I'm only going to let you put 3 items in their toolbox. So let's hear from Athletic Surveys. And when we come back, we're going to see what Brooke Brewer puts in her new athletic director toolbox. We want to thank our good friends at Athletic Surveys for their support of the podcast and the AD Toolbox segment. My school, we use surveys for everything, for kids, for coaches, for parents. And here's the cool thing. The information that would come back on our surveys was almost always over the top positive, about 98%. But the survey also allowed us to hear from those squeaky wheel parents and stakeholders. And it allowed us to hear their concerns, which were usually small, and keep them from turning into big concerns. But going back to that 98%, having that data in our hands was incredibly valuable, especially when you're visiting with a frustrated student or a frustrated parent, or maybe your principal, or maybe even your board. Go to Athletic Surveys. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We've been visiting today with Brooke Brewer. She's got a tremendous background in athletics, and she's the director of athletics at Northwest Arkansas Community College. Brooke, putting you on the spot again, what 3 items would you want to make sure that a brand new AD had in their toolbox?
It's hard because there's so many, and I'm still a brand new AD in many senses of the word, but these are the things I think for me this past year and a half, 2 years have been really helpful. Um, find your champions and find your people. So this was one of the things that shocked me most going from coaching to ADing was as a coach, we're all competing, right? And we'll help each other, but not fully. As an AD, I think it was so encouraging how many other ADs want to jump in and help. So when I have a question about something, I'm really quick to email or call an AD in my region or an AD who's become a mentor and just get some feedback and get their opinion. And it's the most helpful thing you can do because they've been there and they've done that. And so definitely find your people who are going to support you and know that you're not competing with each other. You're there to help each other, and we all win when our students are winning. Um, find, figure out how to get some small victories quickly. One of the first things when I got here, I met with our cross country coach and said, what do you need from me this year? Like, what are some things you need from me? And he gave me the normal things you would expect. And he said, I just want to be able to run an 8K on my course, and I can't do that. And so that became something that I was like, this man's going to be running an 8K course by the time season rolls along. And so I just spent a whole day throwing my energy into that. And we ended up working with a community partner and we got the materials donated to run an 8K. And you would have thought he had won the lottery. And it just took me sitting down and really dedicating some time to that task. So figure out how you can get small victories for your coaches and get their buy-in early on, and it's really helpful. And then I'd say always bring your coffee mug with you. I do coffee meetings with people once a week. And so sometimes it's for a variety of reasons. It's getting to know each other. Maybe it's people across campus and other departments. Maybe it's potential donors. Maybe it's other athletic directors. Maybe it's high school administrators. Maybe it's, coaches from other programs. For us, sometimes that looks like NCAA coaches that may want to partner as we grow and just really sit down and share your story and share your program. We do a lot of work with our local chambers. We have an amazing chamber of commerce here. And so really just sitting down with those folks and figuring out how you can get plugged in. And you're also going to need that coffee because if you're like me, you need about 10 more hours in every day. I tell people all the time, like, things are going great. I just wish I didn't have to sleep. And if I didn't have to sleep, I would get so much more done. So, you're going to need your coffee to come with you. And, yeah, really just find your champions, get some small victories, and drink a lot of coffee, and you're going to be all right.
Well, you probably saw me scribbling those down. I love the terms that you use, find your people from the networking standpoint. And you're absolutely right. It is just, I don't know if there's a bigger return on investment than establishing your network and building those connections. And then again, your turn of phrase, small victories for your coaches. That's our job. How can we make our coaches' job easier? The term I used once, well, when I got hired at that last job, my very first coaches meeting, I'd ask them, how can I make your job more fun? What can I take off your plate to help you with? So great advice from a young AD or a veteran AD. Super. One more time, Brooke, if one of our listeners wants to connect and again, add you to their network or just pick your brain a little bit, what's the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can also email me athletics@nwacc.edu, and that'll come to me. It's a lot easier to remember than my full email. So then from there we'll be connected. But yeah, thank you, Jake, for the work you do. Kind of like I said, when I was looking at getting into this was a podcast I listened to a lot as I was going through the process of becoming an AD. So it's very much a full circle moment for me now that I'm actually on it. It's very odd and I can't believe it, but this is very helpful and it truly is educational.
Well, you're very kind with those words, and as a listener, we only have the best people on our podcast, so you're right in there. Okay, thank you for sharing, taking time out of your busy day. All the best moving forward in 2025, and we're definitely going to bring you back on for another visit. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
For listeners, we want to say thanks to you and remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of every interview to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day. We try to share stories from the world of education-based athletics, along with some best practices. So hopefully you'll come back and join us again on another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time.